Hello and welcome to CoronaNomics, brought to you by Econ Films. This week, what can the world learn from the Far East? The pandemic began in East Asia, but governments there, from China to South Korea to Japan to Taiwan and Singapore, have been credited with coping far more effectively with the pandemic than some of their counterparts in the West. Death tolls in Asia have been considerably lower thanks to, we're told, aggressive state responses, higher levels of testing, intrusive tracking, and stricter quarantines. Some have even managed to avoid shutting down their economies too. So, are there lessons to be learned by the rest of the world? And not just in coping with future disease outbreaks, but in how we fundamentally order our societies?
Joining us today is Ha-Joon Chang, a development economist at Cambridge University and the best-selling author of 23 Things They Don't Tell You About Capitalism, among other extremely widely read books.
Let's start by looking at a chart showing the total number of COVID-19 deaths. It shows a significantly higher death toll in Western countries than in Asian countries. It's almost a tale of two pandemics. We frequently hear that one of the reasons that Asia has coped relatively well with the pandemic, Ha-Joon, is cultural. So, for instance, the strong culture of public hygiene in Japan, the tendency for people to favour bowing over handshaking.
Yes, I think there has been a degree of kind of cultural prejudice, and in some circles, even degree of racism about the way East Asian countries have dealt with this. There are Western countries, Australia, New Zealand, Denmark, Finland, which recognize the seriousness of the problem and intervene very early, and in a very similar way. Germans have been testing and tracing in a very aggressive way. There is no West-East divide. I mean, it's that a divide between failed policies and more successful policies.
Now, many people are arguing that one of the economic legacies of this crisis will be the reshoring of Western industrial production, not only from China, but Asia more broadly.
I just cannot imagine that you can uproot the entire electronics manufacturing sector from Asia and begin to build iPhones in California. You can do it, but it will be extremely costly because then you'll have to rebuild the whole infrastructure, retrain all the workers. I differ with most people in believing that actually trade of physical goods can actually increase as a result of this crisis. A lot of sectors that are the most badly hit are services. These sectors are going to shrink, and what are people going to do with the money? They'll buy more things. Already there are signs that the sales of electronics equipment is rising. So paradoxically, I think globalization will change its shape, but I don't think it's going to take a retreat. Countries that have given this the disaster basic income or helicopter money are actually countries that have a weak welfare state, like the US, South Korea, the countries that whose basic welfare system cannot reach everyone. They didn't have to do it in countries like Denmark, countries like Finland. So I think actually this idea of basic income exposes the weakness of welfare system in certain countries.
Ha-Joon, I want to ask you about two particular countries, Taiwan and Singapore, because they're often held up in the West by people on the right as sort of examples of where the UK should be going, because they have a relatively low share of taxation. They seem to be relatively efficient governments. Is there any? What would be your take on that? Sort of view of countries' success in Asia?
Yeah, unfortunately, these people don't know what they are talking about. If you want to become like Singapore, you have to accept that 90% of the land is owned by the government, 85% of housing is provided by the government, and a staggering 22% of GDP is produced by state-owned enterprises, including the famous Singapore Airlines. I mean, is the UK government willing to nationalize 90% of the land, nationalize the companies that produce nearly 1/4 of the GDP? No.
Thank you so much to our guest, Ha-Joon Chang, for appearing on this episode of CoronaNomics.
We'll be talking to many more top thinkers in the weeks ahead to discuss how to weather the economic storm of COVID-19. So please do stay tuned and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
And remember, if you like what we're doing, please hit like and subscribe.
And if you'd like to talk to us, just leave us a comment below.
This has been CoronaNomics, brought to you by Econ Films.